Yep. Yeah. This is, you can go on YouTube and just watch it. Yeah, it's pretty simple to set up actually. So this is the account I'm using, which is talk about here. Office of Teaching and Learning with Technology. And his recording, which is where I am, and you just go on there and to be quite honest, to set it up, there's a little create button in the upper right hand corner. You click on YouTube and you're signed in. You go to create and it says, do you want to go live? You go live, you can schedule it, which is what I did. I scheduled it for 7 o'clock. And I plugged this one in because it's a better camera than my, plus I can have it pointing here and it's pointing here. And of course it's picking up what I'm saying because it's sitting so close to us right now. Luckily, they haven't started yet. There's someone viewing this right now. So there's someone in here. Anyway. You know Justin Nordstrom? Yeah, I know. He's done some things. He's recording too. Interesting work he does. I remember being at the Tank Museum in New York City and seeing his book about recipes. Keep going here.
That's what we see.
Welcome, everybody. We're just, we thought we had the time would be perfect, and then the one attorney who's joining us, I assume, is not seeing.
Yes, we have an attorney in Pittsburgh that is
So we're trying to.
somewhere in cyberspace waiting to connect. And we're looking.
Yeah. Hi, Melissa. Can you hear us? Thank you so much. That's great to have you here. Okay, so we've accomplished that. Yay.
I know, we can all go now. We got to something small in. Nowadays, it's small.
So I can see the room. I think this is- It'll go. Okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. And really quick, I'm Noreen O'Connor. I'm the steering committee coordinator for the Peace and Justice Center. And that's all I'm going to really talk about. Brian will tell you most of the rest of it. But one of the things I do is tend the website for the Peace and Justice Center. So I just wanted to let you know, if you go to the Peace and Justice Center website, which is peaceandjusticecenter.com, the Sabol lecture is what we're doing today, and that's the third one over. And the information for today is here, and it includes a couple things. One is, and if you know anybody who wishes they were here but they didn't want to come in person for whatever reason, we are streaming on YouTube Live at this link right here, so they can just click right there and they can watch the whole event, and they don't have to log in anywhere or anything, they just go right into YouTube. And the other thing is the Community Justice Alliance, which is we're part of, has supplied us with some great resources that we've posted. We've got them as handouts, and we've also posted them to the website. So there's a lot of resources here that go to other links, and you can also pick that up in paper form, but it's right here, this little blue link that's under there. So I wanted to make sure you knew about that. We'll also say something about Peace Camp, and I just wanted to let you know that the summer Peace Camp is set, and we've got our registration up and going, and we invite everybody to send your children to Peace Camp. So thank you so much for being here. Again, I'm going to start the PowerPoint. Oops, started talking about, you get started talking about pull up a PowerPoint while you're talking.
Okay, well,
And that would work.
let's get the PowerPoint here. So we created a PowerPoint especially for this. Actually, thank you, Nesta, for organizing that for us. That's it, all right.
There we go.
There.
Down.
Go down, Arnold. It might be off.
Yeah.
It's only turning on.
We're good. All right. Thank you for your patience. We had to get it together. We have somebody coming in from Pittsburgh. Thank you, Melissa, for being patient with our technology. Well, welcome, everybody. I appreciate you coming. My name is Brian Dugas. I'm a member of the Peace and Justice Steering Committee, and I will be serving as the moderator tonight. I'd like to begin with a few words about our sponsor, who is the Peace and Justice Center. The Peace and Justice Center is an interfaith organization created to educate groups and individuals in peaceful ways of resolving conflict, to nurture dialogue among diverse groups, and to be a partner in the ongoing struggle for human rights in a just world. One of the Peace and Justice Center's priorities is the Peace Camp, which was mentioned. Its registration is now open, and there are scholarships available for anybody that needs to have those. The Peace and Justice Center has recently created an organization called the Community Justice Alliance, which is working to build a broad coalition of people and organizations from across NEPA that will stand together for peace and justice. This alliance strives to support everyone's opportunity for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness through actions aimed at elevating and supporting the efforts of individuals and organizations who serve the poor, the marginalized, and minority populations. And of course, we would like to thank King's College for their continued support by providing the use of these great facilities for our regular recurring Sabol lecture. The Barbara Sabol Memorial Lecture Series is designed to promote awareness of peace and justice and social issues by bringing notable speakers to the local community, helping us to accomplish our mission of advocating and informing. The lecture is named for a founding member of the Peace and Justice Center who died in 1997. And lastly, we would like to remember Rick Evans, who was a past honoree of the Peace and Justice Center and who recently passed away. He is fondly remembered for his service to the community, in particular to the JCC and its summer camp. Okay, so I want Michael to come down, Michael, to introduce himself and talk a little bit about the interfaith nature of our Community Justice Alliance. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you to Brian and to everybody who's helped organize this today. I'm Michael Polgar. I'm a professor. I teach sociology and Holocaust studies at Penn State and Hazleton campus. As a member of Temple B'nai B'rith, which is the Reformed temple across the river here, I'm part of a committee called the Tikkun Alum Committee. We repair the world, or we follow the Torah in trying to repair the world. And part of what that repair means to me and to Reform people everywhere is to support human rights. And we have a religious action center. I have some table information about the Religious Action Center. And one of its themes for the Freedom Holiday of Passover is to remember and include the stranger. And that means being accessible and open to people of all backgrounds, including immigrant and people who are LGBT. When the Community Justice Alliance was forming, we had discussions at Temple B'nai B'rith, and so what you're seeing now is, a group effort, a collective effort of organizations. So I'm really grateful to the Peace and Justice Center. I want to point out one of our members, Ellie Miller, who's sitting here in the third row. She has won awards with the Peace and Justice Center. She is part and past president of Temple B'nai B'rith, as am I, and we really appreciate the work that goes into both this lecture series and the improvement of the community that we all live in and share and respect. So thank you very much. And I'll let the real knowledgeable people speak.
All right, so now we're going to get into it. And of course, it's all about our attorneys that we have here. So I'd like to introduce our speakers today. They're all attorneys from the region, as you might know, expanded region. And we are grateful to them for joining us tonight to share their thoughts during these challenging times. So I will introduce each one of them, and then afterwards we will continue on. So Nesta Johnson is a family law attorney. She believes every person should be able to make decisions about their own bodies, that everyone should be safe in their relationships, that every family is entitled to recognition and respect, and that every child deserves to grow up in a safe, supportive, and accepting home. Arlene Rivera is an immigration and family law attorney who practices in New York. She represents youth, unaccompanied minors, and their families in both immigration and family court. She primarily specializes in special immigrant juvenile status and asylum. Finally, Melissa. Melissa is on there. We will have confidence that she's listening in there. She's the managing attorney of the Economic Security Unit at Neighborhood Legal Services in Pittsburgh. She provides legal services to clients on employment matters, including but not limited to claims of employment discrimination in a hostile work environment, retaliation claims, wage claims, unemployment compensation claims, and other matters related to workplace law. Ms. Evans manages 2 pro bono programs through which private attorneys represent clients with respect to unemployment compensation hearings or petitions to the court under Pennsylvania's Clean Slate Act. She regularly partners with other public interest organizations to provide legal literacy programs and claims. Ms. Evans also manages and directs the work of 6 attorneys and 2 paralegals whose own practices include employment law, Social Security, public benefits, and veterans benefits. Melissa. And next is John Bird. John began working with North Penn Legal Services in 2017 as a staff attorney and is now a managing attorney. His primary area of focus has been home preservation, including mortgage, foreclosure, defense, and bankruptcy. And attorney Cheryl Sobeski-Reed is presently president of the Wilkes-Barre Law and Library Association, Luzerne County Bar Association, and is a 25-year staff attorney of the Luzerne County Public Defender's Office, Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, representing thousands of youth and indigent persons charged with misdemeanor and felony offenses in juvenile delinquency and criminal court. Those are our attorneys. Okay, so we've got a few ground rules. This obviously is something we need to make sure that we respect others in our conversations here tonight. The phone's turned off, avoid side conversations if you can, respect the individuals, listen actively and humbly. Question and answer is learning and not debating. Share the air and give others time and space to speak. And disclaimers. Presenters are speaking only for themselves today. Presenters are sharing general information about the law. This is not legal advice. There is no attorney-client relationship. Speak to a lawyer about your unique situation and options. Recognize that the legal situation is changing quickly. Online resources may change and may not reflect the CGA's, Community Justice Alliance's views. Okay. So the agenda, each attorney will make a short presentation. We've asked them for 10 minutes. And then we will follow that with questions, a discussion of resources, and allyship. And we will begin our conversation with Nesta.
Your seat.
Would you like to? You got it.
What? All right. Okay, folks. Well, thank you so much for coming down and having me. And you know that you've got real lawyers with you tonight because of that disclaimer slide. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit today about the law as relating to LGBTQ+ folks and specifically LGBTQ+ family law. So I've got 10 minutes and that is an enormous topic. So I'm really going to channel my inner former New Yorker and talk fast. So hopefully folks can keep up and we do have, as Brian mentioned, time for Q&A at the end if anybody misses something in the rush or needs any clarification. So first topic I want to cover briefly is LGBTQ+ individuals and unmarried partners. So the important things to know are in terms of for transgender and non-binary adults, currently we are not having the world's greatest situation when it comes to federal stuff, particularly with regard to identity documents. And John will be talking about a little bit about that, the identity documents piece, so I will not belabor that point. I will say that as of now, people do still have full access to healthcare. Adults do here in Pennsylvania, according to both federal and state law. And some of Michael's colleagues at Penn can actually help people out with that here in Northeast PA. An important thing to know for LGBTQ plus individuals and also people in non-marital relationships is to really kind of think about what might happen if things went wrong. If somebody got sick, if somebody got injured, if somebody passed away. The message that I think I and a lot of advocates for the LGBTQ plus community have been sharing, especially recently, is don't panic, do plan. So when it comes to specifically around your family, what that looks like is estate planning. So a lot of people think that estate planning, things like having a will, is only for rich people, people who have millions and millions of dollars to figure out what's going to happen to that when they pass away. But estate planning is for everybody. And it's something really important to do, particularly if, like, unfortunately, a lot of queer folks are, you're estranged from your family of origin, especially if you're single, you're not yet married. Because if you do pass away, or if you end up injured and incapacitated, if you don't have these documents in place, those are the people who are going to be making decisions for you. So for example, if you are a trans person and you don't have a good relationship with your family of origin, and you have reason to believe that if you were in a coma, they would not want gender affirming care to continue, or that they might dead name you on your headstone, then you might want to designate somebody close to you like a friend. They don't have to be legally related to you in order for you to designate those people as the people who are going to be making decisions for you. I'm mindful that we are in a religious venue. I will not spell out this whole acronym, but there is a great website, GYST, getyourtogether.com, where you can find some of these documents, blank documents that you can fill out so that you can be prepared in the event of an emergency. You can write down your wishes for medical care, your wishes for what happens to your belongings, who you want to divvy up your stuff, what we call be your executor, what kinds of treatments you would or would not want if you weren't able to communicate for yourself. These are all things that you can think and should think about before disaster strikes, because those stressful moments are not when we want to be scrambling to figure this stuff out, right? So those are really the main tips for single individuals and people in non-marital relationships. And the transitioning to marriage, I think one question that folks are having a lot right now, that people in the queer community are, should we rush to get married? What is the future of access to same-sex marriage? And I don't know. I don't know. I can say that unless and until the Supreme Court overrules its decision in Windsor and other cases allowing nationwide access to same-sex marriage, that's going to continue to be accessible nationwide. It is not something that individual states can change at this point. Even if those decisions were to be overturned in the future, it is incredibly unlikely that it would invalidate existing marriages. Very, very unlikely. It is also very, very unlikely that if that were to come to pass and we ended up back in a situation where some states allowed it, some states didn't, we have a very long tradition in this country of states recognizing marriages as valid if they were valid in the state where you got married. And that is likely to continue, regardless of what ultimately happens with the Supreme Court. So to answer the question, should we get married? Again, like a lawyer, this is how you know. It depends on your individual situation. What I will say is marriage offers a lot of rights and protections. It also offers a lot of obligations. It's a big deal, legally and socially. And with the people upstairs, if you are a person with an attic in your house. So think carefully about whether marriage is right for you. And even people who are married, although you do sort of have a by default legal relationship that most things are going to go to your spouse and your spouse is going to make most of those decisions I was talking about before, it is still important for married couples also to have those estate planning documents, to have those powers of attorney, to have those wills in place. Because if you have a will, then the courts look at your will and go, yeah, that looks okay, let's do that. And you don't have to go through a very long and complicated process called probate, which you still have to do if you don't have a will, even if you're married. You do not want that, I assure you. So the other big topic that I want to make sure that we cover today is legal parentage. Legal parentage is the legal relationship between a parent and a child. It comes with a lot of rights and also a lot of responsibilities. For example, a parent has the right to parent their child, to the care and custody of their child. Children have the right to support of their parents. Child support is probably a phrase folks have heard before. And it is also what is severed if you have a dependency case and there's a termination of parental rights. That is legal parentage, is the relationship being affected there. So the important thing to know is there's a lot of ways that queer people build their families. Some same-sex couples may be parenting children from previous different sex relationships, right? Because bi people exist. People maybe have a trans person involved in the relationship that appear, be a same-sex couple, but have different gametes. Or many queer people may build their families through third-party reproduction using a sperm or an egg donor. So using an egg donor is a little bit more of a complicated medical situation. So it's kind of hard to do that without doctors and lawyers involved. But for same-sex couples who need a male gamete, people do make those arrangements informally. And so it is important that if you have a child through an informal donor relationship, to know that being on the birth certificate is not enough to establish legal parentage. Courts can do and have taken people off of birth certificates. So if you are a non-genetic parent of a child, it is extremely important that you either adopt that child or you get an order of parentage, because otherwise what we see is that adult relationships can end and a non-genetic parent can, it's pretty routine. Unfortunately, Arlene and I have both represented a lot of kids in family court, and it's pretty common for parents not to want the other parent to have custody or have visitation. But in these cases, you end up with situations where the other parent is denying that you're even a parent, that you even have a right to seek custody or visitation with that child. And unfortunately, if you don't have the protection of secure legal parentage, you can end up being treated by the court, this is a terrible phrase, as a legal stranger to a child that you may have planned for and parented since the day that they were born. So really, really encourage folks. You can find a lot of good resources on legal parentage and pathways to legal parentage online with your local LGBTQ+ organizations. Also encourage you all to contact your representatives and support enactment of the Uniform Parentage Act here in PA, which would make that whole process a lot simpler for non-genetic parents. Other big thing to know about parentage, when someone seeks public benefits, you apply for WIC, food stamps, things like that, there is automatically, if the child does not already have a second established legal parent, they are going to refer the family to child support to have that second parent established. Child support professionals are not necessarily familiar with all of the ways that families are formed in the modern era, and they are kind of by default on autopilot looking for a dad, whether or not that kid has a dad. And we have seen cases where they have inappropriately established a donor, and that has created all kinds of complications. There is such a thing as a good cause exception. The federal government has provided guidance to child support professionals. Violent relationships are one situation where establishing a second parent and getting them involved back into may not be in the best interest of the child or family. That's the typical scenario in which they might find a good cause exception to send you back to the food stamp office and say, they cooperated, we're not gonna do that, go ahead and give them their benefits. You can request a good cause exception if it's a donor situation as well. Becoming a foster or adoptive parent is also a way that queer folks can become parents. It is, so the agencies that place foster children are not directly part of the state. They contract with the state. Some of those agencies are willing to work with queer families. Some of them are not. Many counties have more than one agency placing foster youth. So if you're interested in building your family that way, and there's one agency that doesn't want to work with you, I encourage you to keep looking. As far as queer youth, the main thing that I wanted to cover today, because I've got all of 90 seconds left, is just to say that parental support and acceptance is the single biggest factor that determines the mental health outcomes for queer and trans youth. So if you are a parent or a caring adult in the life of a queer and trans youth, channel your inner Mr. Rogers and tell them often that you love them just the way they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Nesta. Next, we will have Arlene. Come on. Yes, you might want to sit on these seats. Is that right?
Or stand.
Or stand, yeah.
Hi, everyone. So the topic of immigration is often one that changes frequently, is often in the news, and invokes a lot of anxiety. So my goal today is for two things: for you to know how to prepare, and also for you to know what to do if you encounter ICE. Similar to Nesta, we don't want you to panic. We do want you to plan. We do want you to prepare. So the first thing you do, regardless of immigration status, is gather your documents. Know where all the important documents are. That can be birth certificates, that can be green cards, other forms of identification, passports. Ideally, you are planning this with your loved ones, so make sure to tell your loved ones where these important documents are. The other thing is making a family preparedness plan that includes the location of these documents, and if you believe you're at risk of detention, identifying a person that knows what to do in those circumstances. If there are kids in the family or as part of your loved ones, you also want to make sure that someone is designated to take care of them, and that can be notifying the school of an alternate person, an emergency contact, or someone authorized to pick them up. And that can even go larger to making medical decisions if necessary, depending on your individual plan. The other important thing in terms of preparing is knowing what kind of identification to carry with you every day. And that's going to be dependent in terms of status. So if someone's a legal permanent resident, you are required to carry around a green card at all times. So that would be my recommendation. If it's an individual with a work permit, that is also something that needs to be carried around. In terms of other kinds of identification, the recommendation is to carry around identification that is either local or issued by the federal government. Anything that is issued by another country is best kept at home, if at all possible. And I do want to highlight that there is a very good family preparedness plan resource in the handout. It's provided by the Immigrant Legal Resource Center, and it takes you step by step on how to make your own plan. Part of this planning is knowing what to do if you encounter ICE. And there's two settings where someone might encounter ICE. There's the public setting and the private setting. And the actions that you can take and the things that you can do are different in each. A public setting can be a checkpoint. It can be, for example, in a workplace, if the workplace is in a public setting. And that's when a lot of your constitutional rights come into play. So you have the right to remain silent. Practically speaking, not everyone remembers that, but you do have the right to remain silent until you're able to speak to a lawyer. And what that can look like is, if you are interacting with an ICE officer, is providing those documents to show that you have status in the United States, but not necessarily expanding any further information. The goal is for someone to not be detained. So you provide the documents and hope that that is sufficient. The other right that you have is a right to a lawyer. So you can request to call a lawyer at the encounter, or if you're later on detained, you can also request a call and to speak to a lawyer then. In these circumstances, again, your plan kicks into effect. I recommend memorizing 2 numbers. A phone number of an important person in your life that knows where your documents are and knows who to reach out to. The second phone number is either a local immigration legal services provider or an immigration lawyer that you're already familiar with or consulted with, and you know that they do this kind of work. That way, if you're in those unfortunate circumstances that we don't want you to be, the plan is already in effect. You're not panicking to find someone. In a private setting, we are speaking about your home, your apartment. The important thing to remember there is not to open the door. So if someone is knocking on the door and identifying themselves as an ICE officer or another immigration officer, there are multiple titles. What you want to do is see the copy of whatever paperwork that they may have. Oftentimes, this paperwork is not a warrant, which is what they need to legally enter the property. It's something that it's either general paperwork with your name and information on it, or it's something that looks like a warrant but is not signed by the right person. So you want to ask to see the warrant. You want to confirm that it's signed by a judicial official. The way you can do that without opening the door is if they can show it through the window, try to coordinate that, or have them slide it under the door. But you are not obligated to open the door if they do not have that warrant, as scary as those circumstances may be. And in terms of everything else, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh, okay, so those are the public and private settings where it may be possible to encounter ICE. Right now, there are checkpoints within 100 miles of the border, which that is a lot of the United States. And that information is constantly changing of where these officers are.
It's only one person.
However, it's important to keep
Only
abreast
other
of
person.
what is happening. I do recommend the resources in the handout so you are able to know of any changes. And like I said, preparedness is key. So please undergo that preparation. And I forget who's. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go.
Thank you very much. Great job. Okay, so our next speaker is Melissa, employment law. She's up in cyberspace up there. Hopefully everything will work out. Can you give it a test?
Can everybody hear me?
Can you hear?
Barely.
Good enough?
Not really.
Hear that one now.
Okay. So I have the screen up on the YouTube channel, so it looks like there's a little bit of a time delay. I am sorry not to be there in person. When we were arranging this, it seemed like the weather in March would make the trek across the Commonwealth a little more challenging, but it's actually pretty nice out today, so shame on me, I guess. But thank you very much for having me. I have 75 slides that clearly will not fit into 10 minutes, so we're not going to show slides, but I do just want to touch on some of the highlights of various aspects of employment law. Starting one with the at-will doctrine, which means that anybody in an employment relationship can separate from that relationship for any reason, no reason, good reason, bad reason, but there are exceptions. One of those exceptions is if you have a contract for a term certain, but the more important exception to our conversation today, I think, are the anti-discrimination statutes that exist under federal law, state law, and
also sometimes under county or local law, depending on where you live. So knowing a little bit about the nuances of those more localized distinctions, because as you drill down locally, the protections often are greater. The federal law sets the basement threshold minimum, and then at each layer, they can be more protective of individual or worker rights. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. I am happy to supply a slide deck that's the full boat to anyone that wants it, but starting first with Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. These are specific prohibitions against discrimination in the workplace that is based on any one of these, as the law refers to it, protected characteristics, which include race, color, religion, sex, national origin, or associational discrimination, which is if you are in a relationship with somebody who fits into one of these characteristics. And speaking of sex, this is really, kind of what we're seeing be systematically attacked under the current political landscape. Sex, after the Supreme Court decision in Bostock in 2020, was extended to include gender identity and sexual orientation within the context of because of sex as a prohibited characteristic for any kind of employment decision. That holding remains even with these substantially distressing news stories that we're seeing on the news. And I can also tell you that the state version of the Civil Rights Act, the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act, it characterizes some of those same protected traits, and it also has promulgated or developed regulations through the agency that is tasked with enforcing that statute. Those regulations expressly then include gender identity and sexual orientation under the umbrella of sex. However, not to bring the rain down on this parade, there was earlier this month a petition filed with the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania. That's the first line of courts where issues are raised as to the constitutionality of particular acts by the government. This is Southside Area School District versus the Office of the Governor and the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, charging that entity, that agency, exceeded its power in issuing these regulations that extended these protections based on gender identity and sexual orientation. That is currently pending. We have not yet seen a response from the Commonwealth or from the agency. My hope is that we will see a motion to dismiss for lack of standing. But I see this as a sign both of the assault on the rights of these protections, as well as a political maneuver. We have a election coming up, a retention election. There are 3 justices on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court who are up for retention, and that will happen in November. If you watch the news at all, that is currently happening in Wisconsin at present, and Elon Musk has donated a lot of money to those causes. So I'm not allowed to wax on about politics, but I just point out the importance of these interim elections to your rights, because your rights start in your local spaces and they start in your states, and the federal government doesn't have that much power unless we give it to them. So just be mindful and, learn what you can about what you can do to protect your rights. So going forward, in addition to the protections of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, etc., there is a separate federal statute that protects individuals with disabilities. That is the Americans with Disabilities Act, and a separate statute that protects individuals who are age 40 and older. That is the Age Discrimination and Employment Act. I don't know why the federal government breaks it into multiple statutes, but it does. But in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act rolls all of those protected characteristics into one statute. With regard to sex, it also includes status as being pregnant, as being protected. And in June of 2024, the federal government or the legislature issued the Pregnant Worker Fairness Act, which then also adds additional protections, including accommodations in the workplace for individuals who are pregnant or have a pregnancy related condition or need. I will speak briefly to national origin protection. That involves where people come from and discrimination based on where they are from, whether they speak English as a first language, any kind of cultural affect or dialect or accent. Cannot discriminate against people based on their national origin. Under federal law, there is a separate protection with regard to immigration status, but whether or not that ultimately will be, well enforced remains to be seen. But it does have certain protections for individuals who are legally within the United States. So it is not a full-on protection for individuals who may not be in the United States legally. But in the workplace, if you are authorized to work in the United States, you cannot be discriminated against under the Immigration and Nationality Act. And that applies to any employer with 4 or more employees. Most of the other federal statutes apply if there are 15 or more employees. The state statute applies if there are 4 or more employees as well. So depending on what size of the workplace that you work for, these protections may apply or not apply, the smaller the organization. With regard to that immigration status, one of the things that I wanted to point out is how you go about enforcement. If you are experiencing discrimination and you are lawfully within the United States, but you are not a citizen, then you can pursue a claim that you have to file it as an administrative charge with the Department of Justice if your employer has between 4 and 14 employees. If it's more than 14, then it will go to the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Now, the problem with that is those agencies that are tasked with the frontline enforcement of these statutes are within the control of the federal government. You have seen the layoffs that are happening, so they are not necessarily well-equipped to process charges. And I can tell you, I have watched with some dismay the acting chair of the EEOC announce that the priority for enforcement of the anti-discrimination statutes will be targeted at what she regards as discriminatory DEI policies. So if possible, in pursuit of your rights, I would recommend filing an administrative charge with the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, which governs the state statutes, or with a local commission. In Pittsburgh, we have the Pittsburgh Commission on Human Relations. We also have a more generous city ordinance that expressly includes gender identity and sexual orientation as highlighted protected characteristics, as opposed to being interpreted as coming within the scope of because of sex. They are standalone protections under our city ordinance. I know the same holds true in Philadelphia. I'm afraid I don't know, because I do not practice in your jurisdiction, whether there is a local ordinance that also extends that protection. But anytime you have an issue with regard to workplace discrimination, you will have to file an administrative charge with an agency first. You cannot proceed to court without first going through the administrative process. I highly recommend speaking to a lawyer, and if you have access to legal aid, that it can be a really tremendous resource. for purposes of guiding you through that process. All of these statutes also contain anti-retaliation provisions, which means that if you exercise your rights under the statute or you object to the treatment of others that you believe in good faith violates these statutes, you have that protection. So that's sort of, there's so much more that I could tell you, but I know that we are running short on time. I know that folks are eager to hear more, so I will put a pin in it. If there's more time and you want to hear more, I will be on the line. And again, I'm happy to share out my far too voluminous slide deck. And my apologies for not being there in person. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll have John Bird, and you have some slides, so you just go ahead, key me when you.
Perfect. Everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
So Melissa, I want to let you know, while it was beautiful on your side of the state, I think we had hail twice today. So don't feel bad about not making the trek.
But I'm glad I didn't come into that.
Right? It was like I didn't know where I was. Just want to point out too, to everybody, like this is not like a bunch of lawyers up here trying to drum up business. None of us charge for our service. We all belong to some type of organization where we provide free civil and or criminal services to the public. There are different criteria that you may have to meet in order to qualify for those services, but this isn't like a big cash grab. So we're gonna start off with.
So don't remind me.
Right? Right? I know. I was I work for Civil Legal Aid, right? So I was clients come in and are embarrassed to, tell me that they fell behind on the debt or whatever. Like, girl, listen, right? I work here. Like, we're good. I get it, right? Like, no shame, no judgment. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit is some of what we do here at Civil Legal Aid, as well as some of the stuff that may be important or tangential to what's going on currently. So starting out with name change petitions, there's a lot of different reasons why you may want to have a name change petition. Whatever you want, that's fine. They're actually not really hard to do. So there's a petition you have to file with the court. You have to get fingerprints. You have to publish a notice that you're changing your name. If there is a fear, if you're specifically, I think trans folks would qualify for this. If there's a fear of harm, just based on the fact that someone knows you're now trans, you post a newspaper, you can't petition the court to waive that requirement for you. It depends on the judge. So it depends on what you get. I can't promise how any outcome comes, but my experience in the courtroom, at least in Luzerne and Lackawanna County, have always been that the person's treated with respect. So you may not get what you want, but I don't think you should be fearful of asking for some type of remedy. You have to do a judgment check. So if you have a criminal background, that's up to the judge whether or not they grant the name change. If you have a judgment for some reason, God forbid, and you let someone go with $20 owed to Citibank, you cannot get your name changed until the judgment is satisfied. I just learned this recently from attorney Naraki back there. You can then change your name with the government agencies, and some counties have a packet even to help you do this. Luzerne does. North Penn will be interested in working with income eligible folks who are needing to change their name for transitions, particularly. So then we go on to gender markers, which is a moving target across the country right now. So, next slide. Yeah, thanks. So gender marker changes. Pennsylvania driver's license or your photo ID card are really easy in order to change your gender marker. You fill out a form, you don't need any proof or documentation, there's no fee, and it's still valid for real ID. In order for real ID, you just have to have a gender listed, and M, F, or X count as genders listed. For the birth certificate, it's a little bit more difficult, but not out there. You could do male, female, or X as your gender marker on your Pennsylvania birth certificate. You have to fill out the request to modify. You need your ID and documentation on physician letterhead from a provider that you're undergoing some type of treatment. That could be anywhere from your physician says, cool, you're working on the transgender issue, or we're working on the gender change, or it could be as far as some type of medical intervention, but you do not have to prove any of this. You don't have to show anything. You just need the physician to say, yes, they're working with me, we're good with changing the name. And of course, nothing's free except for BRD. It's about $20 to replace your birth certificate. On to the fun. Next slide. Thanks. U.S. passports, right? Okay, so you are not getting a gender change on your U.S. passport, at least for the next 4 years. You must use the sex assigned at birth. And what I've seen, I haven't done any work in this area, but I follow very closely online. It's something, like a pet project of mine. And what we're seeing is that folks who even had a previous gender change on their passport are receiving passports back if they have to renew with the dead sex. Is that what we call that? Is that it? Right? We're making up words here. Or we're gonna call it dead sex. And so there anything they can do in order to illegitimize your importance in this community. So if you have a current passport with a gender marker change and it's valid throughout, for the next 4 years, you're fine. That's a valid passport. We're not seeing folks being stopped at border points. I follow a bunch of sources online. This is not the gospel. Like we said, this is more like legal infotainment. But as we're going through things, that's kind of the important things. That's it for passports. So we'll go on to North Penn. So we do civil legal defense in about 20 counties here in northeastern Pennsylvania. And we cover Lackawanna, Luzerne, and up to the border of New York, and down to Sunbury and everywhere. So in order to qualify for our services, you technically have to be 125% of the poverty guideline. If you are above that, feel free to call anyway. What we do is we try to spend you down, try to make it. I have no idea the legal wizardry and the mathematical wizardry they do to get people in the door. But our goal is to help people. So if we can find a way to make you income eligible, we will. And we have a broad overview of the types of cases that we handle. And again, name changes, wills, powers of attorney, we're talking about a little bit more moving forward. Housing, home retention options. It's really important to have a roof over your head. I'm sure everybody is aware. Maintaining public benefits, maintaining the household debt collection. I do a lot of mortgage foreclosure defense. That's my primary area. So, don't hesitate to reach out. And if you can't, I have a slide coming up that'll have other resources if you don't think you're going to be income eligible for that. If you call and you are not income eligible, we will also give you resources at that time for you to look at other places. Or if you have another, would you switch to the next slide? Thank you. Or if you have a different area of law that you want help with, like we don't do any criminal. There's some things that we just are prohibited from. We don't do any immigration work, but we do a lot of civil defense and PFAs. And then, kind of going off what Nesta was talking about earlier, if you don't mind, hit the next slide. I think it's my last slide. We do work depending on age group and what needs to be. Let me take a step back. We work on funding, right? Some from the federal government, some from the state, some from different grants. So we may have a grant. I think we do for Luzerne County. We can do end-of-life documents, wills, and stuff for anybody over 60. Right? Not every county can, but we have that funding for every county. It depends on what we have. So always call, do the intake, and see if there's something that we could do for you. Documents that are really important right now: wills, financial powers of attorney, medical powers of attorney. Like Nesta said earlier, you don't know who's going to be taking. You don't want to stop gender affirming care if you're on a ventilator or things like that. But what about not letting your partner in to see you because you're not legally married? Right? So you want to have those documents in place and set up. And again, I'm not selling you anything. I don't get paid. No matter how many I do, it doesn't matter, right? Getting those documents in place so that when, God forbid, something happens, you're able to, your partner's able to see you or you're able to see your partner. We do things like living wills. And really, we're just looking at, if you're not going to get married, there are ways to document that relationship and solidify your rights and protect yourself and your family moving forward. Thank you.
And our last speaker is Cheryl Spitsky-Reedy, please.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm just going to stay here. So I am an assistant public defender. I work in Luzerne County's public defender's office. I'm going to be celebrating my 29th year coming up, so it's a long time. Public defender offices in Pennsylvania are kind of at a crisis stage right now. Every 67 counties in Pennsylvania relies on their individual counties to fund them. We just received funding finally from Governor Shapiro. He pledged $7.5 million last year to indigent defense. And broken down into the individual counties, it was roughly about $100,000 per county, which, as you can imagine, doesn't pay for much. It's not much at all. So actually today I was just in Harrisburg because there was a press conference from the ACLU, who actually filed a lawsuit and sued the state to get more funding for indigent defense services. And we had a press conference to try to plug more funding our way. And in the governor's budget right now, there's $7.5 million for this year, for 2025, but that's not, nearly enough. Like we're modeling ourselves off the state of Michigan. Michigan is very comparable to the way Pennsylvania is, and they're at $100 million right now in funding. And it took them 10 years to get that way when they started. We just started last year. So I don't have 10 years to wait personally. That's a long time. So we're trying to do it faster. And we do have the support of our county, county manager, Romelda Crocomo, and our county council, as long as we can take the funding out of counties and have state funding. They're all in support of that. Particularly in Luzerne County, we had the Kids for Cash scandal here about 15 years ago now. And as a result of that, there were a lot of changes made throughout the state. All kids are presumed indigent, all youth, which is ages 10 to up to age 18 for arrest, and we represent kids up until age 21, free of charge. All kids are presumed indigent. So our office is charged with representing every single youth in the system. They are assigned an attorney. They're welcome to hire their own private counsel if they want to do that, but otherwise our office is charged with representing every single child. And the state rules changed that, the legislature changed that, but guess what? They didn't give any money. There was no money given for lawyers for kids. So I think it's really important, our county is really important to stress that we need to fund lawyers for kids. Our office represents all youth in juvenile delinquency cases, and in criminal cases, we represent indigent people who meet the federal poverty guidelines. We also are appointed by judges, particularly for people that are incarcerated. We pretty much represent anyone that's incarcerated. And if you tell a judge that you just can't afford an attorney, he'll say, point the public defender's office. So we have very large caseloads right now. Typically, we would have between 25 and 30 attorneys on staff, but we only have, at this point, we have 16. So our caseloads are pretty high. I looked yesterday and I have 193 active clients right now. Those are people, real people that are calling me, texting me, want me to visit them in jail, go to court for them. So it's a lot. And our lawyers do it because, as John said, because they're dedicated to helping people. And they don't do it for the money. Our lawyers, our full-time attorneys don't have private practices, so they pretty much, they just represent people. And what we try to be, and we've gone through so much training, we're trauma-informed, try to be non-judgmental, welcoming of everyone regardless of their race, gender, ethnicity, national origin, religion, LGBTQ, age, economic status, immigration status. We have to be aware of, all of the population so that we can treat everyone fairly, because they can complain very easily. People complain very easily about us if we're not meeting our services. So we represent people charged by the local police and the state police, by detectives at the DA's office and the district attorney's office and the attorney general's office, not by federal authorities. Thus, we don't represent individuals with immigration matters. That's separate counsel. But we do have to be aware of immigration status. We can't ask our clients, they don't have to tell us what their immigration status is. Anything that our clients tell us is confidential. Same thing with their LGBTQ status. We don't need to know any of that. It helps us, though, if we know these things so that we can help them in their defense. And we have to keep this information confidential. We don't disclose anything unless the client gives us permission to. And sometimes that is a part of the defense. That's the reason why they might feel singled out or stopped or arrested. And we can use that as a defense and try to help them. Let's see. We have to be aware of the collateral consequences for criminal or juvenile adjudications, criminal convictions or juvenile adjudications, because there's so many things that people can't do if they have a criminal record, housing, getting a professional license. There's just financing. There's just so many things that we have to be aware of. There is a case, Padilla versus Kentucky, from the Supreme Court from 2010, which tells us that we have to make sure that we advise our clients who are non-citizens that they may face deportation. Oh, I'm gonna finish. Was that a?
No,
Oh, that a gong? Oh, sorry. Okay. And the ACLU of Pennsylvania has a great website. They have forms that say know your rights. They have pamphlets, which I was going to read some of their things. I don't know if I have time to do that. We have a local booklet that we give all our juveniles that are arrested about knowing their rights. There's just some general things, I guess I would say. By the time people get to us, it's pretty much too late. They've already been arrested or they're under investigation. If you are under investigation, our office will provide pre-arrest services. We'll go to the police, we'll write letters like you're not talking to my client, or we'll help them negotiate their situation or get them out of trouble. A lot of people don't know that, but you can come to the public defender's office if you're being investigated or if the police want to talk to you. Let's see, some of the rights that you should know about. In Pennsylvania, you don't have to give a police officer your identification if you're just stopped casually on the street. You don't have to tell them. Other states, some states you do, but in Pennsylvania you don't. We always tell our clients it's better to tell the police really who you are, because otherwise you're most likely to not get off to a good start. You're likely to be detained while they search you. A lot of the things I was going to say are the same things that Arlene said about when dealing with ICE agents or ICE. It's the same thing with dealing with law enforcement. It goes a long way if you're calm, respectful, try to cooperate with them, but don't provide them with too much information. You don't have to. Let's see here. Because a lot of people, when they come to us, they've already waived their Miranda rights. We don't recommend that. We know what your Miranda is, the right to remain silent, you have the right to have an attorney. Anything you say can be used against you. A lot of people talk to the police because the police, they think that's going to help them. So they'll just talk all about their case or whatever happened to them, and then they end up getting charged. And the police then use their own statement against them. So we always, if you feel as if you are being asked too many questions, we always tell people the best thing to do is to, well, first of all, you have to ask if you are free to leave. If they say no, that means you're being detained for some reason or investigated for some reason. And then you should say, I don't feel comfortable here. I would like to have a lawyer. I don't really feel comfortable answering your questions. If they say you're free to leave, then you can just go. You don't have to search. They don't have to search your car. If they see something in plain view, that's one thing, but you don't have to give consent to search your car. When it comes to let's see, wait. Oh, cops not being allowed to lie. Well, cops lie all the time. Cops can lie. That's what they're trained to do, so that they can get you. It's tricky to get you to say whatever they want you to say. They can say, hey, we have you on video. hey, we have your fingerprints. Not necessarily true. They're trying to get you to confess to something. So if you're being asked questions like that, the best thing is to ask for a lawyer, because criminal convictions, as we said, have very serious consequences. Your liberty is at stake. Your future is at stake. We have we could do a whole other section on expungements and pardons, but you don't even want to go down that road. If you can prevent being arrested in the first place, or being charged in the first place. Let's see, don't be sneaky. If you don't put your hands in your pockets, it's better to just hold your hands out. If you're because they may think you have a gun or drugs or something, or some type of something on you. If you are in a car, that's a little different. You have to give your license and your insurance information to them, but again, you don't have to. If you're a passenger, you don't have to do that. Don't resist arrest. Cooperating in a traffic stop, just politely, just be polite. Really, just say, "Oh, acting confused is where it goes a long way. I really would like a lawyer. I'm not really sure what's happening here. I need some help." It's very important. If you take anything away from this lecture, and we're all trying to talk about our area of law in 10 minutes, is that you should consult with an attorney for your legal rights. I'm the president of the Bar Association right now. We do have a lawyer referral service. We have lawyers that are available to talk to you or help you on any situation. Some of our lawyers provide free legal representation. So I do urge you to call the Luzerne County Bar Association, the lawyer referral service. It's located in the county courthouse. And we will answer any questions you have. So thank you.
Well, it's that time. I want to remind you of the disclaimer. These are not your attorneys. These are, why don't you word it the right way?
We are lawyers, but we are not your lawyers. We are providing you with general information about the law. But if you have specific questions or a specific legal situation, you should consult with an attorney for advice on the best options for you in your unique situation.
So I would like to think you have some questions. I don't know if you'll ever have an opportunity to have a band of attorneys here to be able to ask questions. There's a lot of things going on in the world. I have some questions. Anybody have any questions? Right there. Well, I'll bring the mic around. You can.
I understand that Luzerne County is going to be leasing office space for an ICE Homeland Security Department in 40 Fort. Is that, obviously that's going to bring a lot more presence to the area. Is that going to bring any other issues or concerns having an ICE office in the county?
You can use the mic there.
Oh, right. Okay. So another disclaimer, I practice immigration law in New York. So the very general answer is because there's going to be more ICE officers in the area, they're more likely going to be more enforcement in the area. That can look like public checkpoints, that can look like workplace raids. Also, that can look like more enforcement in private homes. So right now, there is a lot of investigations and follow-up of the tip line in terms of trying to pin down individuals that like do not have status in the United States. The priorities right now, there are stated priorities and there are the reports that you see in the news. So I don't want to expand further in terms of like what the priorities of ICE are right now because they are not consistent at this point. But those are the kinds of things that you can expect. Does that help?
Not good news. So
Sorry.
I sort of have a follow-on question to that.
Sure.
So I was told in the discussions we were having, I've learned a lot. I've not talked to this many attorneys in my entire life. I was a cop, so I used to avoid it. I have some good jokes, but I'm not I was told that if you are an attorney, you cannot represent, you cannot even speak to a person that is not in this country legally?
So if you're a lawyer, so that's literally my job. So I can represent individuals. I think that might be a reference more to the funding, the local funding.
So our issue is we're LSC funded, which is a portion of Congress. So it's set by Congress. The budget is allocated by Congress. So when they gave us money, they a couple decades ago they tamped back what we were able to do. No class actions. We can't represent anybody who is not here legally, except for folks who are in trafficking or a domestic violence situation. Those we can assist with. That's a government restriction on our work just based on our funding. Lawyers themselves may. I think that's where some of the confusion goes. Please, especially if you need it, talk to someone. Or like Arlene, we want to make sure that they get their rights, that they know what's going on. And that was a miscommunication, I think, just based on going around, just based on what we're allowed to do based on our funding. There are other state agencies like Community Justice Project who do this type of work that are not funded by LSC. So there are people in this space.
And I will just add to that. So as John said, organizations are funded by different means, and John named some organizations. If you would like to look for other organizations, the Immigrant Legal Resource Center has a page where you can search by state and I believe by zip code in terms of other organizations, which would be a good resource.
Okay.
Just to note too that it's sort of touching on what John was saying is that a lot of, to take us all back to middle school civics for just 2 seconds, a lot of the way that the federal government gets the ability to get involved in things is through the Commerce Clause. And so a lot of the control is through funding. And the way that they're able to determine. So if somebody isn't receiving funding from the federal government, this is similar sort of to the Hyde Act that prevents federal funding for certain kinds of medical care. But that doesn't mean, of course, that private providers can't provide that medical care. So, but the worst thing that's going to happen if you talk to an attorney is that they're going to say, I can't help you. They're not going to, take punitive actions.
So to follow off on Scott's point, there may be more enforcement in this area because they're moving into this area. And following off somebody else's, I think you said, to pre-plan and to speak to somebody in advance. There are attorneys out there that deal in immigration in this area that if one of these nice guys comes to the door or comes to the business, they can call and speak to, even if they're not here legally. They can be undocumented or whatever. As I understand it, part of the problem is that the process takes so long that, there are a lot of people that are here working and doing things and they're going through the process, but now they're being held accountable for that and being deported. Is that true?
In terms of that was like a two-part
Yeah, I know,
question. Okay.
all kinds of stuff.
So yes, there are lawyers that undergo that kind of work in terms of you being able to consult with them to plan with them. That can look like going over your immigration case individually and taking steps to try to acquire status, or that can look like planning for, if you're at risk of detention, planning for that. Not all immigration attorneys do that. Immigration is a large field with a lot of specialties. Often immigration attorneys that do removal defense are going to be the ones that are more familiar with the detention process. In terms of the immigration process in general, again, I'm speaking for myself, the immigration legal system is broken. So right now, it takes a very long time for a variety of reasons, and people need to live. So to give you an example, someone who applies for asylum cannot apply for a work permit, also called an employment authorization document, for 180 days. They have to wait 180 days in the United States before they can work legally, or before they can even apply to work legally. So that creates very difficult circumstances for these people. Right now, the stated enforcement is people who have been here less than 2 years people who have some kind of criminal history, and people who have orders of removal that they've already been ordered deported. We have seen circumstances where there are individuals that are undocumented or have some kind of status, but is not the classic legal status of like permanent residence. There are some people, for example, U visas can take 10 years to determine. They are here, they are seeking status, they sought a legal means to obtain status, but they don't have that legal status in hand yet. And they are getting, at times, detained.
But I hear if you have 5 million, you're good.
Yes, unfortunately.
I wanted to speak to that just a little bit. So our office does represent, well, obviously we don't get any federal funding, so we can represent anybody. We represent anyone regardless of their immigration status. So we have noticed that ICE is lodging detainers at the Luzerne County Correctional Facility against people whose immigration status may be questionable. So for us as lawyers, as criminal defense attorneys now, we have to decide what to do with those cases, because you said as a criminal history, there are certain charges that they should avoid that's going to affect their immigration status. Anything like of a violent nature, anything drug related. So it's much easier to have like a property crime than something that's against a person. It's like there's a term like crime of moral turpitude. You know, there's like the term. And so we also have people that are taking jury trials now. They're taking trials to try to minimize the immigration consequences, but I have not seen that in years and years, and it's only within recently now that my colleagues and I are dealing with clients with immigration detainers. And it is sad because, like you said, they've been here for a while, they have families, they have kids, they have jobs. Like, it is sad.
So thank you for all this great information. My concern is that the people that need to hear what you're saying are not in this room, okay? We have people, I know for a fact, in our community that are afraid to leave their houses. They won't go to Walmart. They won't go to Home Depot. They may not even speak English. So what can an organization like our group, as activists, how can we get information to their doors? And that to me is like the thing that needs to happen, is people need to know their rights. This room is full of white people, and we, it's great that we know, but we need to get this information to the communities that need it the most.
So I want to say that was a great question, and something we actually discussed heavily while we were planning this, right? Do we want to have it open where, God forbid, that there was ICE at the door, right? Are we like shooting fish in a barrel? Are we bringing people in here to just get caught, right? So we're live streaming this on YouTube, so that there's opportunity there. As far as going forward with everything else, the internet and phone are a great tool right now. Our organizations have, online presence. You can Google, you can be careful. Don't Google for the answer. Google for resources. Google for an organization that can represent you, something that can help you. I think if you saw our flyer, it said, "Don't forget your cute winter boots." I don't know, is anybody familiar with the cute winter boots thing, so you don't slip on the ice, right? We were very cognizant as we were going forward, and I get that, right? But I think, honestly, reaching out, we have people that speak Spanish. We brought people today at the table who speak Spanish. We have interpreter services for any other language. Call. So we'll get, it may take some time, but we will get to speak with one another.
Just to note, we did create a Spanish language version of the flyer for our event, and hopefully, got it out to a few folks in the community. But, tell a friend, tell a friend the stuff that you learned today, the resources you heard about today. If you have places, and I see someone in the audience has a comment on this as well, if you have places to pick up a couple extra copies of our resource sheets and, spread them around, leave them around, share them in your Facebook groups, because we're certainly here to help, and anything, that we can do to get connected to the folks who need our help, we really appreciate you all being the bridge for that.
I would say stay active politically as well. Get involved in boards or organizations. Support candidates. Do what you can to make change in your community. Stay active. We need it now more than anything.
Yeah, I might have a solution to that problem. If you are a member of an organization that has the capacity to go canvassing, you could go door to door in neighborhoods.
That's what I
handing
think.
out flyers with these rights. You don't have to know exactly who you're talking to. Just go door to door, knock on a door, slide a flyer under the door, leave them at the door. If you are a member of an organization that has the capacity to do so, I highly encourage you to do so. I personally have organized similar campaigns in my hometown where we passed a tenants' rights bill, and we went out and door knocked on hundreds of doors, educating the public on their new rights. So that is definitely a solution that you can go and do.
When we were organizing the Community Justice Alliance, we had these conversations. I was told by people about this gathering right here that they would not come because they were in fear of something. So I know that it's out there, but this is an attempt to organize and to share like minds and cooperate with each other.
Oh, I want to remind everyone that Peace and Justice Center had some of these red cards printed up, these graphs up. They're in English, Spanish, Chinese, Ukrainian, Haitian Creole. We tried to think of who would be in our community that might need them. I have a question that's maybe more for some of the privileged people I do know, but the right to leave your country and return to your country that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights spells out. For a number of my people that I love in my life who have an X on their passport but are a citizen, or have legal residency, a green card, who have expressed to me their concerns about leaving the country and returning, coming back in and being detained at the Boston airport or something like that. But what advice do you have about, especially people worried about that kind of harassment? What rights does somebody have when they have a green card? Can it just be taken away from them so easily that their rights can be stripped from them so quickly because, for example, they exercise their right to free speech at some point that now someone disagrees with or something like
Like a
that?
college campus, say?
For example. Thank you.
So this is an ever-changing circumstance and not something that we've seen before. In terms of the rights a green card holder has, a legal permanent resident has, they should be close to that of a citizen, with the exception of it can be taken away under certain circumstances. The issue at airports, unfortunately, there's not as many rights at airports than there are in other environments. And part of that is national security exceptions for Customs and Border Protection, CBP. So at the airport, they do have a right to take electronic devices and look at electronic devices, which that is what happened to the doctor from Brown that was on the H-1B visa. That is still evolving. I'm not aware of one guidance. The general advice has been try to make passing through the immigration point as smooth as possible, whether that be making sure that all your that everything is clear, like make sure that your passport is not close to expiring, because that can be an issue. Making sure that you have your green card, or evidence of the other visas, because there are other ways to internationally travel. In terms of electronic devices, maybe not being on the device, or having social media applications on the device where they can see what you're posting, especially if you're concerned about speaking free speech issues. Those are the general things. In terms of the arrests we're seeing right now on college campuses, it's being challenged. It's very sad. We had not seen this before. There are rights we should have that right now are being tested. So I think we all need to see the news, see the legal developments. I wish I had more to offer, but unfortunately it's evolving.
We are, and just to speak a little to the X gender markers. So, you know, unfortunately, I think trans and non-binary folks are in a really difficult situation right now. If you wanted to have an X gender marker on your federal documents right now, that is just not an option for you. You know, it's a really, I think, personal and individual decision on whether if you already have an X gender marker, whether you want to seek to revert to having federal travel documents that comport with your sex assigned at birth if you're very concerned about experiencing discrimination or harassment. You know, that's certainly a possible situation that could happen if you have an X gender marker. So that's going to be a really personal decision, bearing in mind that if you do revert to having to your sex assigned at birth, you may not be able to get that X marker back. So unfortunately, that's, you know, a really personal decision right now. But, you know, if you are a U.S. citizen, you do have an X gender marker, and as of right now, there is still a federal prohibition on discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. So if you do experience discrimination or harassment, I encourage you to complain very loudly to the relevant authorities and make your voice heard on that issue.
Sorry, if I can add 2 more things. So the other thing that someone can do is, right now, a lot of us have the ability to unlock our phones with our faces. If you're traveling and feel that you're at risk, turn it off and use a passcode. That's another recommendation I've seen. The other thing that I wanted to mention to raise awareness is, right now there is a rule that is open to comments, but the proposed rule is that applicants that are trying to adjust their status so that they are trying to get legal permanent residence, or applicants that are trying to naturalize or trying to become U.S. citizens, the proposed rule is that they provide their social media accounts. Right now, that rule is not in effect, and anyone can submit comments. If your organization has the capacity to look at that proposed rule and submit comments to it, that would be something that would be helpful, or in theory helpful. One would hope.
I heard on the Hispanic radio station, they had an attorney speaking. On the Hispanic radio station, they had an attorney speaking, an attorney that specializes in immigration, and he was advising our people not to travel. Do you feel they should? And even if they have their green card or anything, it's so crazy right now that there's being just, if it's an emergency and you have, like, if that's it, if it's an emergency, you could travel, but if not, you should just stay put. Do you feel?
It's scary times. Mm-hmm. The way that we've been phrasing it is that it's an assumed risk. So it's a risk to travel right now. It's more risky for some than others. We haven't been flat out saying don't travel, but we've been saying please consider the consequences and whether the travel is worth it right now. For anyone with criminal history, we've been saying not to travel, even if the criminal history may be resolved, because we have been seeing some issues with that. And if, like, for example, if your status is pending, so a green card usually has a validity of 10 years. And you can renew that green card in what's called an I-90. That can take many, many years to resolve, or for you to get a new green card. there is a rule that says that if you carry the receipt and the old green card, you should be able to utilize that. That is riskier right now than any other time. So those are the caveats we've been saying. It kind of depends on how much risk a lawyer is willing to accept for their clients or for the, and if there are any concerns, that would be a circumstance to speak to an attorney too.
Do we have any questions from YouTube?
We do not.
No. Okay.
Over here, and then I'll come to you.
I'm going to do something a little controversial and talk about African American history in school setting. Is everybody familiar, or has anyone heard of the concept of green books? Green book?
Mm-hmm.
So people of color are well familiar with the fact that sometimes going to certain places is not safe. So I want to make sure that we communicate as somebody who has had to put themselves in that mental state or that mind state. You don't have that armor that you might have if you've never had to put yourself in that position. You don't have that mental armor where you feel like you can go about and share information and be safe. You can knock on doors and be safe, but there are ways to connect with people and to distribute information, to meet them where they are without putting yourself at risk, because even people as far up the ladder as AOC is being targeted for sharing simple information about your rights. So there are a lot of different groups that are run in this community, in this area, that exist on Facebook, that have thousands of people in the very communities that we're talking about. Join the group, message somebody in leadership, provide them with the great information that these kind of people have provided us with today. Send it to them, and they will distribute it in their communities, and that way it's going to mitigate some of the risks that we're all going to put ourselves at if these things do continue to travel in unknown directions.
And I think just using your common sense when you're out, like if you go to a lawyer, right, and he comes out to greet you in a camo suit, maybe you go somewhere else, right? Like, you know, like you're just kind of like, oh, I'm in the wrong spot, my bad, you know, and just go next door.
Not to stereotype our fine camouflage Americans.
Right, I'm just saying.
And also just to build on that, please call your representatives. Call your representatives. There was a recent executive order talking about legal sanctions and disciplining lawyers specifically. So speaking about the risk, we have yet to see how that is implemented, but our country hasn't seen that before. So please, please call your representatives.
And I kind of want to say too, based on what Melissa and everybody else said here earlier, right, your local elections matter. So we're at, in the Pennsylvania Congress, right, I think we have a 1-seat Democratic majority, and there's a couple of elections that are possibly going on. So if you look at some of the bills that are being passed, right, the bills that they don't want to go to the floor, they're tacking on horrible amendments to those bills so that you won't have that discussion and it won't be brought to the floor. So I think at this point, and I'm speaking as a citizen, and this is not my organization, but I think at this point we have to hold our elected folks accountable and let them know where we feel, what we want, and just go forward that way.
I just wanted to also reinforce the idea that individuals have rights and can take action and be responsible. So can organizations. So as was said earlier, participate in your organizations, whether it's in person or social media. Encourage your organizations to take stands. It's not a matter, it's for us nonprofit organizations. People tell us we can't take stands, but we can. We just can't endorse candidates in certain periods of time. And organizations matter. So when we were making the flyer to distribute, there are resources for organizations. Some, like I assume the ILRC, which I don't know well enough, will provide support for individuals and organizations. So organizations can work together locally, as we are today, nationally, or statewide, nationally, and it's really important. I have a question for Melissa. I don't know if Melissa's still there, or maybe Arlene. Are you still there, Melissa?
I am.
All right. So in the public discourse, the the term illegal alien is often used. And my question is, how is an illegal alien, what is that as a legal concept or as a concept more generally? And how is it different from an undocumented person or a person with immigration status? Can you help us use the right terminology when it comes to people who are at risk of various forms of rights infringement?
I'll be honest, that's outside the scope of my practice. Like John, I work for a legal aid organization that is funded by LSC, which, to give you historic framework, was established by Richard Nixon, and then additional restrictions were put in by Ronald Reagan. So a lot of the things that hamstring legal aid organizations are by design. So we are unfortunately, like John's organization, prohibited from representing people who are not lawfully within the United States. But I think someone else on the panel could probably speak to what the appropriate language is, or whether there is even a distinction, or it's just a matter of word choice by the person speaking those words.
So in terms of the terminology, it's a little bit of both. So illegal alien, there are statutory, in the law, there's a reference to illegal alien, so sometimes that term is used in that realm. In terms of what is the more accepted or appropriate language, an undocumented individual. The reason behind that is that illegal alien, or the term alien itself, has had a history of dehumanizing immigrants. And the difference between the two terms can be minimal. It can refer to a person who entered without inspection, so they didn't present themselves at a port of entry. That can mean crossing the border. And it can also refer to someone who came here with some kind of status and for whatever reason are out of status. Visas expire, statuses expire, circumstances change. So that is the reason behind the term undocumented. And that change was happening prior to this current administration, even when it comes to, like I work with what we call unaccompanied minors. In the law and the regulations, they were initially referred to as unaccompanied alien children. But again, that is dehumanizing. So they were referred to previously as unaccompanied children. I suspect that will be changing soon if it hasn't already. But does that help?
I know there was a question over there, but you gave lawyers microphones, so I think we talked over. Did you still have a question earlier?
Yes, I do have two questions. So the first one is, have you experienced any effectiveness when going through an employment authorization renewal, specifically for category C33, if they request a premium processing in compared to regular processing?
Have I encountered effectiveness?
Yes, if you pursue the premium processing as opposed to regular processing.
Unfortunately, that is outside of my realm. The categories I work with are C8 and C9 and C14. Primarily, I haven't done C33.
And the other question is, if somebody's going for an employment authorization and they're waiting for it, if that has been delayed and it's outside of the processing times, is your request of congressional inquiry still the best approach?
So in that circumstance, I would recommend two things. There are some categories that you can have an extension even though you don't have the new employment authorization document in hand. So consulting either the USCIS website or consulting with an attorney that could, because like the thing with the USCIS website is that it lists who qualifies, but the language is very hard to understand. So consulting with an attorney about that, whether you qualify for the extension, would be good. The other thing is, yes, congressional inquiry, because there used to be a USCIS ombudsman that you could reach out to. That office has, everyone was laid off. So that office essentially no longer exists. The other thing that can be tried is contacting USCIS customer service and making a case inquiry if it's outside of processing times. That has varying effectiveness, but those are the things that can be pursued.
Thank you.
Okay,
Just a quick question.
all right, yeah.
Question on passports. Am I correct in thinking that you have to have at least 6 months left on a passport in order to use it to travel outside the country?
That's true of most countries, yeah.
Is that-
Bringing us home.
Yeah, I just had a quick comment, sort of building off what the gentleman in the front row was saying about your safety going from door to door if canvassing is something that you and your organization are involved with. It's important also to consider the safety of the people whose doors you're knocking on. And bear in mind going in that in certain communities, the presence of your organization might be cause for fear or confusion or suspicion. And so if you are working in a community that you are not familiar with and that is not familiar with your organization, it is important to in some way first establish trust with that community, whether that be reaching out to another organization that that community is more familiar with, talking to their leadership, working with them, anything from an immigrants' rights organization to one of the churches in that community, any sort of community or organization that is more familiar with that neighborhood. Link up with them and work with them so that your presence is welcome and is safe.
Okay, one more, yes. How about one more and then we'll go on to, choose.
I just wanted to say, I do come in contact with a lot of people that are at risk and in the immigration realm of things. So I do have a lack of resources to refer them to, especially locally. And I see a lot of them go through a lot of, scams and just general issues with, anywhere from like the language barrier, right? And just not knowing or understanding the law system, the nation, and just in general, right? So they fall victims often, very, very often, of scammers, of people who play out that they are attorneys, but they're not. One common one is the notaries, local notaries, local tax preparers. They pass as attorneys or immigration attorneys in the community. So my, I feel very frustrated and powerless because I do not have local resources to give to them. So I was thinking maybe any of you, if you guys know, or can put something together where we can have like a list of even private attorneys. Some of them would pay, but they need to go to the right places where they're not going to be scammed or robbed or, or tricked. I mean, I've seen so many people who have been waiting for years of a process that they think was submitted. And when they come to the right place or find someone who advocates for them, the case was not even submitted ever. And then they fall out of, that time frame. Immigration is very time sensitive. So there's so many things around that piece. So I came across a resource from the Philadelphia area. And this organization, they gave a list of private attorneys, right, from that area, a list of like shelters or, just places where to go. So I feel like we need that here. We need that here locally in northeastern Pennsylvania, or more specifically like Luzerne County help, right? So that we can send them in the right places and avoid all these other issues that are caused.
We would love to have you come up when we're finished and get your contact information so we could talk about potentially creating a localized resource like that, since it sounds like, thank you for sharing that need with us.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on here because it fits right in.
There we
There we
go.
go.
All right.
Next, we'll talk about allies.
So I think some of my colleagues have talked about some of these issues before, but so we will move quick. Vote, please vote, please vote, please vote in midterm elections, please vote in local elections, please vote in state elections and national elections. It's your rights on the line. We are living here in purple Pennsylvania. This is the only state in the nation currently with a split legislature. I mean, we are really balancing on a razor's edge of which way things are going to go in this great Commonwealth. And I hope that every single person here who is able to move that needle does so. So some important dates coming up. Know who your representatives are and make sure they know who you are. I cannot stress this enough, and particularly call. Those call, write a letter if you're a fan of snail mail. Those email forms that you can submit on their website or by an issue, those absolutely matter. And if that's all you have the capacity to do it. But picking up the phone, taking time out of your day to speak to somebody, those politicians' offices really take that seriously. And a lot of times, they don't think there's the appetite. They think people don't care about an issue because they're not hearing from their constituents about it. So it is very important for you to call your representatives early and often to express your views on different issues. And that includes both your state representatives as well as your representatives in Congress, folks. Please contribute your time, your talent, or your treasure to local organizations. We've got some great folks tabling outside today. Sign up for alerts, show up to events. Everyone has something to offer. Everyone has something to offer. I heard the most fantastic story actually recently from somebody who was trying to get their elderly knitting circle to help them create some pink hats. I won't go into any further detail than that, this hallowed space for the women's march. And the older people said, well, gosh, I can't do that. I can't even think of that word. And then they said, what's new, pussycat? And all of a sudden they were in. So maybe you can knit, maybe you can phone bank. Every single person has something to offer. So give what you can. And finally, be an ally, be an upstander. Every one of us has spaces that we, have the power, whether it's where we work, whether it's where we live, where we volunteer, our local church. But, do what you can to make sure people feel welcome, included, and safe. Introduce yourself with your pronouns, even if you're a cisgender person. Are you in stealth mode? I am a cisgender woman married to a cisgender man. We don't look like a queer family, but we are because I'm bisexual. All of those statistics on queer people, the largest by far group of queer people are bisexuals, and a lot of us aren't out. A lot of conversations about folks happen in rooms that actually people don't know those folks are in. So if you feel safe and comfortable sharing your identity, it's the largest thing that moved the needle on marriage equality. The biggest factor in whether or not somebody supported marriage equality was whether or not they knew a queer person. All of this us and them gets a lot more mixed up when people find out that some of them are actually some of us, okay? Practice ring theory, folks. Comfort in, dump out, okay? For those of us who aren't familiar, something terrible happens to somebody, like, well, I had cancer once, okay? So I got to complain to everybody, and my husband got to complain to everybody except me. Right? And our best friends got to complain to all of our more extended friends, and so on and so forth. Comfort in, vent out, okay? And finally, please interrupt or deflect harmful behavior if safe. My husband is a white man with a lot of tattoos, and he on Tinder went by F. Caleb because his first name is Froggy, which is a little interesting on dating sites. And I'm not gonna lie, my lesbian besties and I looked at that profile and we think the F stands for Führer? We were a little concerned, okay? And so people say the wildest things around him. People try to give him the wildest handshakes. And he takes great pleasure in telling those people who his wife is. Okay, so if you feel safe to do so, interrupt and deflect in a moment. If you don't feel safe intervening in the moment, support the victim, report the perpetrator. Okay, every single person in this room has some level of power. I encourage and implore all of you to exercise it. okay? Be the change.
So, I would definitely like to thank King's College and the Peace and Justice Center for once again supporting the Sabol lecture. The organizations that are out here tabled, we have a few that came out here, a few were apprehensive about doing it. But what I'm telling you is that the idea behind this was to sort of be the tip of the spear. We are brave enough to come out. We need courage. We're going to need community here in the near future. Talk to these people that are out here at the tables, get to know them, come together with the Community Justice Alliance. One of the things that we decided we would do is reach out to a very large community, Latinx community here in Wilkes-Barre, and provide support and maybe just associate with them, get to know each other and work with each other more. So that's what we're trying to do with the Community Justice Alliance. We know attorneys now. We have a whole board of them up here. We know people that we can talk to. You got to be smart. Nowadays, you got to have courage. Watch the Peace and Justice Center's website for additional information. And please take the time to meet all these tables, the people that are out here at the tables. They're good people to know. They're brave enough to be here. And they're going to need that courage. We're all going to need that courage over the next few years. So let's come together and build a community. Thank you. So this is your opportunity. If you'd like to speak one-on-one, please, there are some names of people that we'd like to get. We want to work with you. That was the idea.
Now, can we save that stream? What? Oh, I'm on there now. I'm sorry. Am I?
Now we're off.